incredible increases and wonders for everyone's lives. So I think I'd pick that on that time frame.
I guess one of the things I've been always really impressed by is, you personally recruited Helion to come do Y Combinator, and they're doing incredible things over on the fusion side. Um, was that something that you were thinking about even all the way back then, or obviously energy and climate was sort of a part of what everyone's worried about even back then, but
This is a little bit embarrassing. I've been obsessed with energy and AI as like the things that I thought would be the two most important things, or at least the ones I was going to be that I felt most passionate about for a long time. And really like the two areas that I knew I wanted to like concentrate time and capital towards. I cannot recall ever thinking until like after starting OpenAI that they were going to be so obviously related. That, the that energy would be eventually the fundamental limiter on how much intelligence we could have. And I don't know how I missed that, because I usually am good at thinking about things like that. But I really did think of them as like very independent. We were going to need AI to have all the ideas, energy to make all the stuff happen in the world. And I obviously, right after starting OpenAI, I got obsessed with needing energy for AI. But like pre-2015, I think I thought of them as orthogonal vectors.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen that chart that all the effective accelerationists in the room have seen around basically having a high standard of living, like the sort of really,
Yeah,
it's
I'm obsessed with this
directly
chart. I've been obsessed with that chart a long time.
it's
I
directly related to the amount of energy that any given person has access to.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most amazing charts over a like long period of human history, is the correlation of quality of life and abundance of energy and cost of energy. So that chart and charts like that were a significant reason that I got obsessed with energy in the first place. It is just this like crazy high impact thing.
It sounds like it wasn't entirely interdependent. It was more you had twin interests, but
Yeah.
you've
Well, I was
literally
sort of
woven them
I
together.
had like the one interest of like radical abundance and just like what were the kind of technological leverage points to just like make the future like wildly different and better. And these is the two kind of key things for that, but not as much as the same vector. Now I think a lot about like how much energy can we actually build on Earth before we just heat the planet too much from running the GPUs, and like how long can we go before we have to put all the GPUs in space. Um, but at the time, yeah, I really thought of them differently.
I mean, it seems like one of the defining beliefs that technologists uniquely, ideally have, that they believe that we can actually create that sort of abundance. If you have intelligence on tap and then you have energy on tap, then how does that go? It's like all watched over by machines of loving grace.
I've never been to one of those degrowther conferences in Europe or whatever, but I've always kind of wanted to go to one.
This is the anti-degrowth
This is the
conference.
anti-degrowth conference, totally. But I would like love to be like sitting, in the dark and the cold with no one pulling out their phones and just like talking about how horrible everything was and there was no hope. Like I would love to experience that mindset once, because I've never felt it. And I think it is like it is one of the movements that has been ever hardest for me to identify with. Obviously, this is like my crew and my world, but the sort of like the optimism of startups, of San Francisco, of the technology industry, of AI, of what all y'all will do, uh, like that is like the natural space my brain abides, and it's very hard for me to really empathize with the other side of that. But I'm pretty sure we're right and they're wrong.
How do we get there, though, right? This incredible vision of technology actually creating for abundance for others. I mean, you've already done so much, but point us the way. Like, how else do we get there? How do we make it faster? Does government play a role in this?
Almost just about 5 years ago, like pretty much this week, we put GPT-3 into an API and people started playing with it. And it was barely usable. It was quite embarrassing. And in 5 years, we have gone from this like thing that could barely write a sentence to a thing that is like, PhD level intelligence in most areas. 5 more years, I think we'll be able to maintain the same rate of progress. And I think if we do that, if we also build out the infrastructure to serve that to people, then everybody in this room will figure out how to take that technology and adapt it to what everybody needs. The analogy I like most for AI is the transistor, like the historical technical analogy. Some people figured out like a new, really important scientific discovery, and society, the economy, whatever you want to call it, just got to work, just did its thing. The magic of that just figured out how to make incredible value for people, and really, over a fairly short period of decades, significantly ramp up quality of life. I think this will be even faster and steeper than that, but I think it'll go in directionally the same way. We need to make the great technology, figure out the remaining scientific stuff, which I don't think there's much left. We need to figure out how to build out the infrastructure that you all will need to be able to serve this. And then you all have got to go figure out what people in the world need with this new magic.
So let's flash back to 2005, the very first batch of Y Combinator. How did you hear about Paul Graham? You were reading his essays.
I was reading his essays. So I'd heard about, like, he kind of had this cult following on the internet. But I heard about what was then called the Summer Founders Program, and now it's just called Y Combinator, from Blake Ross, who I lived in the same freshman dorm with and posted about it on Facebook.
And then I think Paul said, "Oh, you're a freshman. There's like another batch coming." And what did you reply to him by email with?
Funny you bring that up. I just dug up the email like a couple of days ago because I felt I had been misquoted over time.
I'm curious.
And his telling of the story is, I said, like, I'm a sophomore and I'm coming. But I wrote a much nicer thing than that. It was like, oh, maybe there was some misunderstanding. Actually, I'm a sophomore and I can still make it, and I would love to, if that's still okay, to come the next day.
So in some ways, the wild thing is you're sitting in front of 3,000 people who kind of they are sitting where you were back in 2005. What would you say to, the Sam Altman from that time? Given what all the things you've seen, all the things you've learned since, like, what are the things that you're most surprised you didn't know that, it just took, you've been through it, like you've done it.
I wish someone had like taught me the importance of like conviction and resilience over a long period of time. People don't really talk about how hard that is. It's like easier for a little while, but your reserves kind of like wear down on it, and how to keep that going for a long period of time. Also just sort of like trust that it's eventually gonna work out. Like, obviously my first startup didn't work that well. I think a lot of people kind of give up after one failed startup, but startups don't work out all the time. And learning how to keep going through that, keep working through that is I think really important. Developing like trust in your own instincts and increasing that trust as you refine your decision making and instincts over time, I think that's really important. Kind of courage to work on stuff that is out of fashion, but is what you believe and what you care about. I think that's really important. I had a kid recently, and the thing everyone tells you when you have a kid is that it is the best thing you will ever do, but also it is the hardest thing you will ever do. Like, the good parts are much better than you can imagine. The hard parts are much harder. That is all totally true. And that is also basically what I feel like being an entrepreneur is like. The good parts are really great, better than you think. And the hard parts are like shockingly much harder than anyone can express in a way that makes any sense to you, and you have to just keep going.
Sam Altman, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. We said, okay, we're going to go for AGI. 99% of the world thought we were crazy. 1% of the world it really resonated with. In 10 or 20 years, unless something goes hugely wrong, we'll have like unimaginable super intelligence. This is the best fucking time ever in the history of technology, ever, period, to start a company.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for all the inspiration. OpenAI itself is a true inspiration for any really, really ambitious person. Maybe we just start with that. What were some of the decisions early that seemed small that turned out to be incredibly pivotal?
Just deciding to do it was a big one. Like, we got very close to not starting OpenAI. AGI sounded crazy. I had Gary's job then, and we were, there was like all of this other great stuff to do that would work, all these great startups, and AGI was like kind of a pipe dream. And also, even if it was possible, DeepMind seemed like impossibly far ahead. And so we had this year over the course of 2015 where we were talking about starting it. And, you know, it was like kind of coin flippy. And I think this is the story of like many ambitious things where they seem so difficult and there's such good reasons not to do them that it really takes a core of people that like sit in a room, look each other in the eye and say, all right, let's do this. Uh, and those are like very important moments. And I think when in doubt, you should lean into them.
So there were just a billion things, a billion reasons why people might say you shouldn't do it. I mean, off the bat, like even one of the
It's
things you figured out was the scaling laws,
it's
for instance,
so
right?
hard to remember what it was like. Next year will be our 10-year anniversary. And so not yeah, thank you. But to like remember what the vibes were like about AI 10 years ago, that was like way before the first language models that worked. We were trying to like play video games and we had this little robotic hand that could sort of barely do a Rubik's Cube. And we had no ideas for products, no revenue, no really idea that we were ever going to have revenue. And we were like sitting around at conference tables and whiteboards trying to come up with ideas for papers to write. It was such, it's like hard to explain now because it looks so obvious now how improbable it seemed at the time and how the idea of ChatGPT was like completely in the realm of science fiction.
I mean, one of the things that really jumped out at me was you sort of rallied this idea that you should be working on AGI, and then simultaneously you found the smartest people in the world who were working on that thing.
That second part was sort of easier than it sounds. If you say we're gonna like do this crazy thing and it's exciting and it's important if it works and other people aren't doing it, you can actually like get a lot of people together. And so we said, okay, we're gonna go for AGI. 99% of the world thought we were crazy. 1% of the world it really resonated with. Turned out there were a lot of smart people in that 1%, and you could get like there wasn't really anywhere else for them to go. So we were able to really concentrate the talent, and it was a mission that people cared about. So even though it seemed unlikely, if it worked, it seemed super valuable. And we've observed this many times with startups. If you are doing the same thing as everyone else, it is very hard to concentrate talent, and it's very hard to get people to like really believe in a mission. And if you're doing like a one of one thing, you have a really nice tailwind there.
Okay, so some people in this room might be thinking, like, should I try to start an OpenAI scale thing off the bat? Uh, you also worked on Loop your first time around. Were there lessons from that?
OpenAI was not an OpenAI scale thing off the bat. OpenAI was like 8 people in a room, and then it was 20 people in a room, and it was very unclear what to do, and we were just like trying to write a good research paper. Um, so the things that eventually become really big do not start off that way. I think it's important to like dream that it could be big if it works. Nothing big starts that way, and Vinod Khosla has this quote that I've always liked, which is there's a very big difference between a $0 million startup and a $0 billion startup, but they both have $0 of revenue. They're both like a few people sitting in a room, and they're both just trying to get the first thing to work. So the only advice I have about trying to start something big is pick a market where it seems like there's some version of the future where it could be big if it works. But other than that, it's like one dumb foot in front of the other for a long time.
How people use ChatGPT has changed a lot. How people use your API has changed a lot. Uh, what surprises you the most with the latest models like O3, and what emergent behaviors or use cases are standing out to you right now?
I think we're in a really interesting time. We haven't been in one of these for a while, but like right now, we're in an interesting time where the product overhang relative to like what the models are capable of is here. The products that people have figured out to build is way down here. There's a huge, even if the models got no better, which of course they will, there's a huge amount of new stuff to build. And also, like last week, O3 cost 5 times as much as it did this week. And that's going to keep going. I think people will be astonished at how much the price per performance falls. We have an open source model coming out soon. I think people are going to be, yeah. I don't want to like steal the team's glory and pre-announce this, but I think you all will be astonished. I think it will be like much better than you're hoping for, and the ability to like use it to run incredibly powerful models locally is gonna like really, really surprise people on what's possible. But So you have this world where like the model capability has gone into like a kind of new, like a very new realm. The cost of the APIs are going to keep falling quite dramatically. The open source models are going to be super great. And I think we have not yet seen the level of new product innovation that the reasoning models are capable of, which makes sense. They're pretty new. But this is like an exceptional time to go build a company that takes advantage of this sort of new thing that exists, this sort of new square on a periodic table that no one has built with yet. So only in the last month, I think, have we really started to see startups that are saying, okay, like reasoning models are different. The whole interaction model is different and really building for that.
I mean, for me, even memory has turned into it feels like I'm talking to someone who knows me, which is interesting.
Yeah, memory is my favorite feature that we've launched this year. I don't think most people at OpenAI would say that because we've launched a lot of stuff, but I love memory in ChatGPT. And I think it points to where we will hopefully go with the product, which is you will have this like entity that gets to know you, that connects to all your stuff, and that is like proactively helping you. It won't just be like you send a message and it sends you one back, but it'll like be running all the time. It'll be looking at your stuff. It'll know when to send you a message. It'll know when to go do something on your behalf. You'll have, special new devices and it'll be integrated on every other service you use. And you'll just have this thing running with you throughout your life. I think memory is the first time where people can sort of see that coming.
I Back in the day, you tweeted a little bit about her. When is that coming? Can you give us an alpha leak around that?
I think gradually is the answer. No, if I had a date in mind, I would probably just be excited and tell you. Um, but like, it's a little bit here with memory.
Right.
It'll be a little more here when it's persistently running in the background and sending you stuff. It'll be a lot more here when we ship the first new device. But I think the key of her is not the little piece of hardware. It's that this thing got to a point where it could run in the background and feel like a sort of AI companion.
I guess we're starting to see the power of LLMs with integrations into your real data. Uh, you know, I've heard rumors that MCP is coming to OpenAI.
I think today.
Yeah. Oh,
I
today.
think so.
Fantastic. What has been surprising about the actual integrations? Like, have you been seeing people actually operating on their core database? At YC, we actually have that agent infrastructure internally, and we use it all the time.
Definitely people are starting to use ChatGPT as this like operating system with everything, with their whole lives in it. And integrating into as many data sources as possible is important. Devices that are always with you, like new kinds of web browsers, the connection to all data sources, memory, and then a model that's persistently running. You put all that together, I think you get to like a pretty powerful place.
Do you think that'll be in the cloud in the future, or will it be on our desktop, or some mix of both?
Some mix of all of that. Definitely people will run local models for some things. Like, man, if we could push like half the ChatGPT workload onto your local devices, no one would be happier than us. Like our cloud, I think we will run the like largest and most expensive piece of infrastructure in the world pretty soon. So if we could push some of that off, that'd be great. But a lot of it will run on the cloud.
Is it surprising to you how hard it is to get compute?
I mean, we've gotten really good at it,
Yeah.
but it is. We went from like a zero, like no ChatGPT.com didn't exist 2.5 years ago to like the fifth biggest website in the world. It'll be the third at some point, hopefully someday the first if our current growth rates continue. And I think doing that is just hard no matter what. Like you usually get longer than we've gotten to scale up a like infrastructure for a new company. But there's like a lot of people that want to help.
Well, it's incredible work that you guys have been doing. We're seeing reasoning models like O3 and O4 Mini evolve in parallel with multimodal models like 4.0. What happens when these two threads converge, and what's the vision for GPT-5 and beyond?
I mean, we won't get all the way here with GPT-5, but eventually we do want one integrated model that can like reason really hard when it needs to and generate like real-time video when it needs to do that. If you ask a question, you could imagine it thinking super hard, doing some research, writing a bunch of code just in time for like a brand new app only for you to use, or kind of like rendering live video that you can interact with. So I think that will feel like a real new kind of computer interface. The AI sort of somewhat already does, but when we get to a model that has like true complete multimodality, like perfect video, perfect coding, everything, and deep reasoning, that will feel like quite powerful.
It seems like that might be a hop step over to the embodied aspect. That's having vision, having speech, and having reasoning is a hop step to, you know,
Yeah.
basically the robot we want.
Our strategy has been nail that first, and then make sure we can connect that to a robot. But the time for the robot is coming soon. I think I am very excited about a world where when you sign up for like the highest tier of the ChatGPT subscription, we send you a free humanoid robot too.
I mean, that future is going to be pretty wild, being able to have robots that do real work in the real world.
I think we're not that far away now. Uh, the mechanical engineering of robots has been quite difficult, and the sort of AI for the cognitive part has been quite difficult too. But it feels within grasp, and I think in a few years robots will start to do super useful stuff. Making a billion robots is still going to take a while, but I don't know. I'm interested in the question of how many robots do you need to fully automate the supply chain? Like if you make a million humanoid robots the old-fashioned way, can they run the entire supply chain? Drive the mining equipment, like drive the container ships, run the, foundries and make the new robots. And then maybe like you actually can get a lot of robots in the world quickly, but the demand for humanoid robots in the world will be far more than we know how to think about with the current supply chain.
I guess when you were sitting in my seat, one of